Author, Ishami and Ntumikiyurwanda. Innocent number and the silence number. Justice for the oppressed number. Truth must prevail. Number 2. We title, The Silence of the World, Unveiling the Truth Behind Rwanda, Congo, and Global Interests. Chapter 1, Introduction, A Question for Humanity. What has happened to humanity? How can those who claim to uphold democracy, justice, and human rights turn a blind eye to suffering, injustice, and historical wounds that continue to bleed? This book seeks to explore the complex realities of the Great Lakes region, particularly the ongoing conflicts in the Democratic Republic of Congo, RDC, the role of Rwanda, and the silence of global powers who stand by as people perish. Chapter 2, Historical Context, The Roots of the Conflict. To understand today's conflicts, one must look back at history. Colonial borders drawn during the Berlin Conference left many ethnic groups displaced, including populations who later became known as the Banyamulenge in the DRC. Over time, these communities faced systematic discrimination, exclusion, and violence, which led to ongoing conflicts that persist to this day. The post-independence regimes in the DRC failed to recognize the Banyamulenge as Congolese, leading to decades of marginalization. Meanwhile, in Rwanda, the pre-1994 regime fostered divisions that culminated in the horrific Tutsi genocide of April 1994. The genocide survivors, under the leadership of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, led by Paul Kagame, reclaimed Rwanda, ending the massacres and rebuilding a nation from ruins. Chapter 3, Paul Kagame and the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF. Paul Kagame, a former refugee who grew up in Uganda, emerged as a key figure in Rwanda's history. The RPF, formed by Rwandan exiles, played a crucial role in stopping the genocide and establishing a new government focused on national unity, economic progress, and security. Kagame's leadership transformed Rwanda into one of Africa's fastest-growing economies, earning global recognition for stability and innovation. However, Kagame's leadership has also been met with controversy. While Rwanda progressed, the presence of genocidaires who fled to the DRC led to a persistent security threat. The world overlooked the reality that those responsible for the 1994 genocide regrouped in the DRC, receiving support from Congolese regimes and international actors who preferred to maintain chaos for economic gain. Chapter 4, The M23 Movement and the Struggle for Survival. The emergence of the M23 movement was a response to the continued oppression of the Banyamulenge and other Rwandophone communities in the eastern DRC. These communities faced repeated massacres, displacement, and neglect by the Congolese government. When all peaceful avenues failed, they took up arms to defend themselves. However, rather than being acknowledged as a liberation movement, M23 has been labeled as a Rwandan proxy force, despite Rwanda's consistent denial of involvement. The reality is that various international actors have fueled this conflict, using RDC's instability to exploit its vast mineral resources. Instead of addressing the root causes, global powers have manipulated narratives, blaming Rwanda while ignoring the alliances between the Congolese military, FARC, and genocidal militias such as the FDLR, Forces Démocratiques de Libération du Rwanda. Chapter 5, Global Interests, Who Truly Controls the Region? The Great Lakes region is rich in minerals, particularly in eastern DRC, where resources such as gold, coltan, and cobalt attract powerful multinational corporations. Western governments and big corporations have long benefited from the instability, ensuring that Congo remains a conflict-ridden state rather than a stable and sovereign nation. Whenever efforts arise to bring genuine peace, they are undermined. The recent Angola peace agreements, while promising, were never implemented, exposing the hypocrisy of international diplomacy. The so-called defenders of human rights have ignored the cries of victims while prioritizing economic and political interests. Chapter 6: Sanctions, Hypocrisy, and the Isolation of Rwanda. Despite Rwanda's remarkable transformation and efforts to maintain security, it has faced sanctions and international pressure. The same countries that praise democracy and human rights impose restrictions on Rwanda while ignoring the role of foreign-backed militias operating within the DRC. International organizations, including the United Nations and Human Rights Watch, have remained silent or complicit. Their inaction raises fundamental questions. Why is suffering ignored when it does not serve global interests? Why do leaders like Paul Kagame, who brought stability to Rwanda and sought regional peace, face criticism while those responsible for destabilization receive support? Chapter 7: The Media War, Shaping Public Perception. Media plays a crucial role in shaping global narratives. The portrayal of Rwanda as an aggressor while ignoring the atrocities committed by anti-M23 coalitions reveals the deep bias within international reporting. Some artists and figures, like John Legend, have defied these narratives by continuing to support initiatives like Visit Rwanda, but many others remain silent out of fear of political backlash. Chapter 8: The Future, What Must Change? The youth of the region, particularly those of Banyamulenge descent, face an uncertain future. Their survival depends on whether the world is willing to acknowledge the truth, challenge the exploitation of RDC's resources, and address the injustices faced by marginalized communities. The international community must stop the selective application of human rights principles. If true peace is to be achieved, all voices must be heard, not just those of powerful nations and corporations, but also those of the forgotten victims of conflict. Conclusion: a call for justice and truth. What has happened to humanity? How can people see but remain blind, hear but remain deaf? The world's so-called leaders must answer for their hypocrisy. Justice should not be selective, and the suffering of one group should not be ignored because it does not align with economic interests. If history has taught us anything, it is that silence in the face of injustice makes one complicit. The time has come to acknowledge the truth, challenge the system, and fight for a future where the voices of the oppressed are no longer silenced. This book serves as a plea for justice, truth, and accountability. To those who have suffered and continue to suffer in silence, your stories deserve to be told, and the world must listen.